Psychedelic Experiences, Jungian and Metaphysical Contexts. Author, Dr. Andrew Kuzmicki. All rights reserved. This audiobook is protected by copyright. No part of this audiobook may be reproduced, distributed, or transmitted in any form or by any means, including photocopying, recording, or other electronic or mechanical methods, without the prior written permission of the author, except in the case of brief quotations embodied in critical reviews and certain other non-commercial uses permitted by copyright law. Part 1, Introduction. A psychedelic experience is an experience that changes our perspective of viewing our life and even, in a broader sense, our vision of the world. Psychedelics are a class of hallucinogenic drugs whose primary effect is to trigger non-ordinary states of consciousness. This causes specific psychological, visual, and auditory changes, and often a substantially altered state of consciousness. The classical psychedelics, the psychedelics with the largest scientific and cultural influence, are mescaline, LSD, psilocybin, and DMT. I will take the risk of saying that all who have had that experience do not see the world and themselves the same way anymore. Your view and understanding of yourself and surrounding reality change so dramatically that it may even affect your metaphysical belief system, your ontological point of view, even if you think that you didn't have one. This book's attempt is to show the path between psychedelic experiences and the changes in our life view that follow them. We need to remember that our metaphysical preconceptions or points of view are acquired by us through participation within a wider society and culture. We automatically and even unconsciously absorb the presently dominating points of view. We absorb them from media, from the significant others around us, our teachers, famous people, scientists, philosophers, writers, etc. But when we begin to study, in a more systematic, logical, methodologically correct way, the different aspects of our experiences, we always experience huge obstacles on this path. For example, we realize that every philosophical or metaphysical point of view applied by us has its limitations. Every method, every paradigm brings with itself a separate way of thinking about the world and its different vision. Additionally, for example, every area of the scientific domain has its contemporary paradigmatic preferences of conceptualizing and studying. Most respectful and believed methods are to some extent always the sign of our time and our belief system, our collective intellectual preferences. Jung was aware of this issue, but also of the limitations of his own preferred scientific or paradigmatic view. He knew as well how difficult and delicate the process of exploring the realities that transgress the contemporary scientific knowledge and acceptable paradigms. He was aware of the problematic matter of a phenomenon he wanted to explore, and to be able to do so, he applied conceptual perspectives that were transgressing the actual, at that time, materialistic and mechanistic point of view in psychology. Furthermore, he also stepped out of contemporary psychology into the ground of philosophy, phenomenology, and even metaphysics. He knew how problematic his move was and tried to draw a boundary between his psychological and scientific point of view and a wider realm of philosophical thinking. Jung tried to use philosophical methods, phenomenology, without being accused of being a philosopher. We can see this effort of Jung's in the below sentences in relation to various issues of interest to him. Psychology cannot establish any metaphysical truths, nor does it try to. It is concerned solely with the phenomenology of the psyche. The idea of immortality is a psychic phenomenon that is disseminated over the whole earth. Every idea is, from the psychological point of view, a phenomenon, just as is philosophy or theology. For modern psychology, ideas are entities, like animals and plants. The scientific method consists in the description of nature. All mythological ideas are essentially real, and far older than any philosophy. Like our knowledge of physical nature, they were originally perceptions and experiences. Insofar as such ideas are universal, they are symptoms or characteristics or normal exponents of psychic life, which are naturally present and need no proof of their truth. Jung, 1982, Psychology and the Occult. The only question we can profitably discuss is whether they are universal or not. If they are universal, they belong to the natural constituents and normal structure of the psyche. And if by any chance they are not encountered in the conscious mind of a given individual, then they are present in the unconscious and the case is an abnormal one. Jung, 1982, Psychology and the Occult. In the above sentences we can see that Jung wanted to justify here only the archetypal, collective aspect of the human mind, trying to refrain from further metaphysical dimensions, but, what we will see in the next parts of the book, that he eventually crossed that border and incorporated the metaphysical reality within his conceptual efforts. I wanted to show this borderline of the Jungian theory, particularly, the way we, Jung, cross the line between our psyche towards the metaphysical vision of the world. That means, from our psyche, through noumenal aspects of the world, towards the world in itself with the core concept of logos and associated with it contemporary concepts of information and its dynamic aspect, energy. Furthermore, I would eventually like to include in this vision of the world a room for non-materialistic, even spiritual, reality with associated terms like a spirit or souls. From this perspective, the reality we experience is the world shaped according to universal laws, but those laws are not understood in a materialistic way. These laws include shaping the matter mechanisms but are not limited to them. The here postulated universal laws exceed beyond the current materialistic physical laws, pre-assuming that there is a non-materialistic reality in which, for example, elementary particles are in fact the phenomenon materialized according to still unknown laws of the future physics. I am thinking here of the levels. God logos understood as cosmic mind and as reason/information/meaning and potentiate information in the form of the existential fields, materialistic and spiritual. Information shaping all physical quantum fields, but also the spiritual fields of existence, information as energy, dynamic physical forces, the world experienced by us as material, the world of thoughts, transcendent archetypal reality, potential hypothetical spiritual entities or dimensions, etc. In this context, life after death is considered to be only as one of the potential forms of existence. Our life is here considered only as one of those forms. In the above sentences we can see that Jung wanted to justify here only the archetypal, collective aspect of the human mind, trying to refrain from further metaphysical dimensions, but, what we will see in the next parts of the book, that he eventually crossed that border and incorporated the metaphysical reality within his conceptual efforts. I wanted to show this borderline of the Jungian theory, particularly, the way we, Jung, cross the line between our psyche towards the metaphysical vision of the world. That means, from our psyche, through noumenal aspects of the world, towards the world in itself with the core concept of logos and associated with it contemporary concepts of information and its dynamic aspect, energy. In the above sentences we can see that Jung wanted to justify here only the archetypal, collective aspect of the human mind, trying to refrain from further metaphysical dimensions, but, what we will see in the next parts of the book, that he eventually crossed that border and incorporated the metaphysical reality within his conceptual efforts. I wanted to show this borderline of the Jungian theory, particularly, the way we, Jung, cross the line between our psyche towards the metaphysical vision of the world. That means, from our psyche, through noumenal aspects of the world, towards the world in itself with the core concept of logos and associated with it contemporary concepts of information and its dynamic aspect, energy. Part 2, Structure of your mind. According to Jung, your psyche consists of all conscious and unconscious processes taking place within you every second. You can say the same about yourself, understood here in Jungian perspective, German Selbst, which is, from the Jungian perspective, unconscious, holistic in its nature entity/subject that has been internally differentiated, giving you your I/ego, but also which is responsible for the huge range of dynamic psychosomatic laws of the self-regulating of your psychic processes. The psychic system is composed of various complexes, of which the ego complex is only one among others. That is why, in Jung's view, unconsciousness is understood to some extent as another unconscious subject. The manifestations of the unconscious processes may have a form of complex regulated experiences. In order to distinguish this phenomenon from ego consciousness, Jung referred to the consciousness of the unconscious complex as a luminosity, which also applies to archetypal experiences. Jung understood archetypes as inborn dispositions or unobservable psychic potentialities, crystallizing the conscious experiences recurring in typical human situations, and even producing similarly structured ideas, thoughts, emotions, or fantasy motifs. See further. M. L. von Franz, Psyche and Matter, 2001. Your psyche is partially conscious and partially unconscious. It's a very complex and dynamic entity. One significant part of your being is the ego, and the second important agent is the unconscious subject, for example, the self. This subject is superior to your ego, but at the same time it has a paradoxical nature, not being directly available to your consciousness but still determining your behavior, choices, the subsequent stages of your development or, as some would like to see it, your fate. This subject not only determines the direction of your development, but also reacts in particular situations initiating corrective compensatory processes, see, Compensation, stimulating the process of psychological integration of mental opposites, or inducing specific preferences regarding life choices. In Jungian thinking about your psyche, the systemic perspective prevails. Jung describes it as a relatively closed self-regulating system that consists of several essential subsystems. These subsystems are, on one hand, your consciousness and unconsciousness, but when we describe them from the hierarchical perspective, they can be visualized in the following order. 1. Ego, I, adapting your psyche to the external environment. 2. Persona, responsible for your adaptation to the external, social reality. 3. Soul, animus/animus, that is, in this perspective, a function adapting you to your internal reality. 4. The personal unconscious, containing material detached from the field of your consciousness. And 5. The collective unconscious, that is, the area of the unconscious that is present in all human beings. Importantly, however, the real subject of this larger whole is still considered to be yourself, understood here as the subject transcending your conscious ego. Thus, the self not only directs your thinking from within unconscious mental processes, but is also the element functionally higher than your I. It's something like a superconscious subject. That's why Jung metaphorically symbolized it by both the circle and its center. The circle encompasses all your conscious and unconscious processes and at the same time is the imaginary center of your whole psyche. The center of your consciousness is the same as your I. The self is unity, but internally it is characterized by a paradoxical dichotomy. It is based on oppositions, it is both personal and superpersonal, it embraces both what is known or experienced and what is not yet experienced or what can't be experienced at all. In the context of your conscious experience, you can say that your I is surrounded by its sphere of influence and experiences it as a kind of unconscious, external will. It can therefore be said that the key to the Jungian understanding is the fact that there are at least two volitional levels within you, the level related to your I and the level that exceeds your I. That's why Jungians always, during your psychotherapy, search for possible signals from this level. The concept of the self expresses the Jungian vision of psychological unity and completeness of your total personality or psyche. But since this personality is and always will be semi-unconscious, it can only be partially realized as it is only partially empirical. It will therefore always remain, to some extent, beyond the horizon of your insight. Jung didn't formulate any ultimate definition of the self and even said at some point that he does not know the nature of this center of the psyche. He emphasized, however, that we can try to gain insight into this domain by studying the area where your psyche fuses with your body and where the processes involved can be characterized by a particular focus on a goal.